Hi everyone, welcome to Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. I'm Langdon DeMint.
And I'm Julian Taylor.
And welcome to our podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Two Bald Guys Talking Safely. Langdon DeMint here, my dear friend Julian. How's it going, Jules?
It's good. I'm just to let you know, because I never stay in the same place long enough twice. I'm actually in good old Chicago town again.
You got the old Chicago-opoly.
Yeah. I'm actually in one of those offices where you could be anywhere in the world, though. They all look the same.
Well, good. Glad you're here. Glad you're here safely. Most important. We have a guest with us, another bald guy that has joined our presence. It's an honor to have Simon Jones here. Simon, how are you? Would you like to give a quick intro? Welcome, bald friend.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here with you, gentlemen. The third bald guy today, albeit bespectacled, as you can see, to make me look semi-intelligent. There we go.
There's a certain air of sophistication about one with glasses. I'll give that to you.
Thank you. Whether or not it goes quite with the Scouse accent, what one will never know. I'm doing my best.
So sophisticated. Well done. Well, Simon, it is a pleasure to have you here. Would you like to give a quick intro for yourself? Sorry, I feel like you could do better justice than we could.
Not at all. I'm Simon, everybody. Simon Jones. I've been in the safety game, obviously, for a number of years now. I've gone and written a couple of books, which are doing reasonably well, actually. They're called The Safety Salesman. And one's called Shoot from the Lip. That was the first one. And the second one, released yesterday, is called Big Mouth Writes Again. And I think we're here to talk about them.
Well, congrats to the newly released book. I haven't gotten myself one yet, but I will definitely be open to getting that. I remember the first one, saw it, have it actually. So I'm excited to read the second one. Could you help me though? I need some advice here. For years, have thought about writing a book. So it's when I write, I am a little technical. Well, so there's two ends of the spectrum here. I either write a little technical because my undergrad's biology and I'm used to the science, just kind of writing of that, or I write very childish, humorous, but wanting to get to the same point. I want to start off with a children's book, but then I want to work my way to actually writing a book like you have and, others that friends of mine have written, in the safety realm. So I don't need you to necessarily tell me how to write like a child because I've already got that checked. But how did you come about even getting to writing a health and safety book?
Yes, many would even wonder whether I actually have. My stuff is obviously very unique to me, and I write in my voice and how I like it. Any advice I would give you is just have a go and be yourself at first. It's probably actually quite hard to write a children's book. It's probably harder than you think without being too technical or maybe dumbing it down too much. I don't think I'd want to attempt a children's book. I think that'd be quite hard to do. Tough audience, but just maybe have a go and be yourself. I started, just doing like blogs. That's how I started. And mine at first were probably a little bit more formal than I wanted. And then I changed to sort of more of a style that just how I sort of speak. Because the whole idea with my stuff is to be relatable. But if that's what you're after, maybe just try and just hear yourself speaking as you write. Because that's what I try and do. If I could work out how to sort of do an audio book, which, I think these are probably crying out for that. That's the next stage for this, my stuff, Just be yourself, mate. That's what I do.
I think that's pretty good.
I was just going to jump in, Simon, because I was going to say, because I have read the whole of the second book now, so I can do a succinct summary, if you like, of the second book. I would call it. I love it because it's kind of. I would call it a ramble, but it's a great ramble. I can hear you talking as I'm reading it. But if I summarize, there's lots of references to great music. Yeah. We seem to have a real alignment when it comes to bands. There's some really great references to film. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, there could be some spoilers in there if you're behind the times in terms of watching some well-known sequels that have come out recently. There's also some great references to crispy snacks, and that's the bit that really got to me. Because actually, your top 2 crispy snacks are exactly the same top 2 that I would have, and I would sum them up as they're crap crisps in UK parlance, but they taste great. So you can go and buy really expensive chips, as Langdon would say, but actually sometimes the cheap chips are the really good ones.
So, quick question.
Yep.
Is there a difference between crisps and crispy snags?
Well, no, I meant by that crisps. Bags of chips.
I was going to say I'm lost. But okay.
Yeah. Well, but they're all from like when I was at school and you'd come home off the school bus and maybe have like 25 pence left from your school dinner money, and I'd go into the shop and buy myself a bag of Monster Munch or something, you know. So you're right, it is all the crap ones. But there's a fella from KP, like Snacks, who makes some of them. He's been on to me already saying that I hope ours are in the top 5. I said, well, you have to read it, won't you? But you're right, it is getting back to it. It is deliberately written like rambling for a reason to make it even more conversational. I actually looked at how maybe some like Billy Connolly. Do you know who Billy Connolly is, Langdon?
Mm-hmm, I do.
So how he tells a joke sort of goes all round various things, then comes back to the sort of punchline at the end. I think that's quite clever, that. So I try and, you know, do stuff like that as much as I can, but it's mainly to break up what is a incredibly dry subject. That's why I do it. It's, you know, to make it relatable. It's funny what people pick out.
The other thing I was going to say, Simon, was because you credit quite a few people at the beginning of the book.
Yes,
and I'm determined we're going to get a credit in book 3.
Definitely.
So I'm going to call you the John Grisham of health and safety writing, because you're kind of coming up to your trilogy when you get your next one out.
That's pretty serious, though.
It's not bad going, is it? Considering that, you know, I hadn't got a clue what I was doing, and I've just done it for a bit of a laugh. The first one took a bit of time to do because I had to learn. Because obviously it's all self-published and so everything that I've done everything, and learning how to use that sort of software and everything that took a bit of time. This time it was much easier with the formatting and the writing of the second one probably took about 6 months to do. I did start it, as I said, in the May. Number 3 is already underway. You know, if I had John Grisham's money, it'd be all right, wouldn't it? You know,
you never know. You never know. You might be the next big thing.
Pretty soon you can charge thousands for appearance fees. I mean, not for this, I hope. Good grief, I didn't get that invoice, but
no, you'll definitely be a number 3. That you know, I put that in at the end. That's like a James Bond throwback, isn't it? From the end of the James Bond films, James Bond will return in ... I thought I'll have a bit of that in that one. See who picks that up. But yeah, the title for number 3 is already there, and all the chapters are there. Do you know what? All the chapters for number 3 have come from this Christmas. Took the kids out ice skating. Obviously, I don't ice skate. Not a man of my physique. It'd be wrong. And I just sat there watching them, and all the chapters all sort of came to me all in one go. 10, 11, just ideas of what I think's a funny chapter, and even the heading, you know, the title of the book came on that day, and then I've got to sit down now and figure out what it's all about. But as I said to Julian before, a lot of my stuff, and this might help you, Langdon, is don't overthink it too much. You might start writing and go on one direction and and then think you'll go off maybe and do something a bit different. And that's the exciting bit about the writing that I like. You know, where I start, I've got a loose map, but I like to sort of maybe take it, you know, where your subconscious wants to take it. And things like the postscript, for example, in the second book, that came purely from Dave Foy, wrote the foreword for this one. When he sent that back to me, I read that, and that sparked an idea, you know, of how to end it, and that's quite nice. That's quite a nice way of doing it, you know.
Well, you know, just pitching. If you need anyone to do a forward for you on the next book, we're available.
Well, do you know what? Number 3. Number 3 is already this is how this is how in demand I must be. Number 3 is already promised to another, but there is a number 4. So you could be on number 4, can't you? But you'll get a mention anyway on number 3, lads. Calm yourselves down. Calm yourselves down. You'll be a number 3.
I think the biggest compliment I can pay you, Simon, about your books is they're a bit like the aforementioned Monster Munches and snacks, that they're really easy to consume. And I think that's really important when we get into safety, because like you said, I think one of your points is you say you're not highbrow and serious, but actually highbrow and serious just puts people off, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I thought you were going to say you were similar to crisps in the crap. I was slightly worried then for a second. The idea is they are supposed to be approachable and relatable, but I think underlying it, I hope people sort of get the idea that I do actually know what I'm doing, and it took a long time to get to here, and a lot of hard work to get to that. And I think once you can do that and you can understand it, I think then it's a good way of breaking it down rather than it just be, a load of nonsense. Or sometimes I think people overcomplicate things maybe to compensate for things that perhaps they don't understand as much as they could.
I was going to say as well, it's about painting a different picture of what safety is about, isn't it? Because it's got this terrible image. And again, one of the other references in the book is to one of my favourite British comedians, who actually one of his characters that he has is the classic health and safety guy. And again, it paints that slightly different picture. And I mean, I think one of the lines that really resonated with me was you talked about when you go into a new role, how do you sort of establish yourself and not be seen as that typical safety police walking around with a clipboard.
Yeah, and it's really hard to do, because even if you're not that person, lots of people will assume that you are, just by your job title or the field in which you work in, and there's lots of people who aren't like that, but there's also lots of people who still are. And I think it's those sorts of people that maybe are, they are a job's worth, or they are, maybe they are a little bit unsure of themselves, and it's difficult for people sometimes. I think because of my sort of background and what I've come from, I did for 15 years of policing there before I was doing this. You can look at things perhaps through a slightly different lens and be a little bit more relaxed, because people will think, will look at a police officer and have maybe an image or an idea of what a police officer is like. But I did lots of different sort of roles and jobs in the police, including some sort of, undercover sneaky beaky kind of stuff, which again, it involves a different kind of, way of being. So it's what I've come to. But I started out doing all this really for veterans, because I thought they were the ones that would understand where I was coming from, the most. Because there wasn't really, I couldn't see many sort of ex-police doing it. It's not so much of a well-trodden path as it is for sort of ex-military people. So I started writing more for them. There's lots of people felt I could see were maybe a little bit lost or didn't know how to sort of transition, but that's where it all started from. But yeah, it is about breaking even the stereotype, even the front covers. I picked the front covers for a reason. The first one was supposed to be a bit of a riff on, like, you might know these, Langdon, or you might not, like Ladybird books. Have you heard of them? They're like kids.
Got a couple.
Yeah, they're like kids books where they're like an old-fashioned kind of photo on the front, and that was the idea behind the first one. And even the colours, it's like safety colours, aren't they? The yellow and the black, and that's a riff on a Factory Records poster, the first one. But then the second one, I just threw that out the window really. I thought I'll make it really obscure and put a picture of a cake on the front of it, but it isn't really a cake; it's a sponge. It looks like a cake, and the neon colours,
It's a fun sponge.
Yeah. So the front cover was all up. That's why I picked the neon colours and like a mixtape sort of 80s vibe, but you've got to read the book to understand the front cover, really. And I'll do the same with the third one, or something obscure. The third one, if it gets people just looking at it already, because a few people have looked at it and messaging me online going, what's this got to do with safety? There's a picture of a sponge cake on the front. Well, you know, have a read, my friend. You tell me.
You know, I love the Ladybird books, though. That's the one that's like the wife, the mom. Every time I used to go to the UK, I felt like I would bring one back. I brought one back, the wife, for my wife. You know, did the mom, which at the time I didn't really know. I was like, hey, these are neat little British books, so I would just buy them. And then you get reading them, and you're like, there's more to this.
Yeah, and they're sort of tongue in cheek, aren't they? And that suits my sort of style. But that's what we were aiming for with the first one, because Sharon, my wife, designs all the book covers for me. But we've stuck on the idea where the lines, they line up, like where it says the Safety Salesman on the front of the first one, that matches the second one. So eventually, if they do become, you know, a series of however many, they'll look quite nice on the shelf or whatever, you know. I have thought about this, you know.
That's the shelf or the coffee table are two crucial places.
Either.
Yeah,
You know.
I'm with you. What kind of, and you alluded to it. So, you know, thinking about what led you here. I mean, you said that you don't ice skate because you someone of your stature. Well, I know a little bit about your past from what we've talked about, which is slightly opposite, because I would feel like you should be able to. So maybe like what got me into health and safety, for example. So because I want to hear what led to you now where you are. But for me, you know, I will be honest, I was planning on doing optometry. That had kind of been my goal for as long as I could remember, or, you know, being a professional golfer, which that was not going as planned. So then it was optometry. Stop, Jules. So then it's been much better the last, you know, I keep telling my wife, just give me a couple of years of practice, I could make it. But anywho, it's neither here nor there. What kind of led me was I started working with a friend of mine who was an industrial hygienist. I was in between, you know, I just graduated in December, so I was waiting anyways to hopefully do the optometry school thing. And I was working with him. I was like, you know, I like this. And he was on the board at Murray State. So I ended up going to school, getting my master's in occupational health and safety, industrial hygiene. Then with the intent of, you know, I was going to be a health and safety, you know, an industrial hygienist, potentially that specific aspect. So it was planned. And if I go back, Jules has heard me tell this. My dad was president of a big building materials and concrete plant. And even as a child, I used to go around and spray paint around the fire extinguishers. You know, so it was probably inherent at an early age, and I just didn't know it. I tried to deny it, evidently. But, you know, so that's me. It was kind of a, you know, it was a planned attack, so to speak. How about you?
Not planned at all. Literally fell into it. As you know, I was quite merrily going along there, policing, and I've been doing that since, you know, I was 21. Joined up straight from university. That's what I wanted to do, and through injury and the ill health that came from that was taken away. And I was, you know, all joking apart, in a bad way for, you know, quite a long time, physically and sort of mentally. Wasn't, you know, it really did almost finish me off. You know, and I'd nearly died at one point from it. How did I get into safety? I did literally fall into it. I went to when I could work again, or wanted to work again, because it took me nearly 2 years sort of to get over where I was. I was at home a lot, and I was looking at sort of other jobs I could do or I'd be interested in, because it was really hard, because that's all I wanted to do, you know. And even then, when I was in my mid-30s, that was still what I wanted to do, really, but I couldn't do it anymore. So I went to a college, to cut a long story short, local college by us, just to have a look at their sort of becoming a lecturer or, you know, doing something like that. And I was just sat in their induction program, and this is true. Somebody just came over and said, "You've got some safety qualifications," and I said, "Yes." because I had some from when I was policing, and they said, "There's a job going here. Do you fancy it?" I said, "Not really," and I didn't. And I just didn't. I hadn't even considered it because I thought I'll either go into teaching maybe, or maybe retrain to be a solicitor or something like that. But I wasn't keen on that, and I literally just fell into it. I went for the interview anyway. They gave me a chance, and that was it. I haven't looked back. 10 years later, I'm doing it. I decided to sort of join companies that I'd have something to learn from, because I'd never worked anywhere else other than policing at that stage. So I tried to pick companies that I thought were good at doing safety, so decent sort of roles really. And I moved around to get myself that sort of experience. And I moved sectors again to sort of get experience. The hardest part was getting the first job, and that's why I'll always have time for the college. Then I try and do stuff and go back as often as I can to help them different things, because they did give me what has been a second career, far now outreaching, in terms of how far I've got from policing. Financially, it's a completely different ball game altogether, and safety now is what I do. It's policing was something that I did. It's switched the other way around, but that I fell into it, and then decided I quite like this. And once you sort of get your head around the technical bits, and the learning curve starts to flatten out a bit, you realise you've got a lot of skills and transferable sort of attributes that can be really good in this kind of work, So that's what I'm doing.
You said that you just said something when somebody first asked you about doing safety. You said no. Why?
Because I had that preconceived idea as well about who goes into this kind of role, or maybe what this role is all about. My brother said to me when I told him, he did say, as Jules has said about that Keith Lard character, what are you doing? And I did have to think about it. I did have to think about it long and hard, really, whether I actually wanted to do it. But pretty much as soon as I started doing it, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed certain aspects of it in certain sectors more than others. But yeah, that's what you do now.
And that's why I was asking, same way on my end. I think about it, and I was very much, when I tell friends or anything, when I got into it, "Oh, so you're OSHA?" Stop. No, I'm not OSHA. There is a different side to health and safety that's not OSHA. So, and that's why I ask, and, kind of thinking about it with Jules, same way, Jules, once you give you have before, but what took you into doing some health and safety? It's been a transition for you as well.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Langdon. I think we all fall into safety differently, don't we, using Simon's term. And I was oblivious to safety for a long time, even working in a fairly heavy industry. And it was only when I saw a colleague get really seriously injured when somebody turned on a machine that he was working on. That was sort of the spark of it. But it was a gradual thing for me that sort of that awareness came and the importance came. And I think that kind of leads us really neatly, Simon, into one of your passions, which is how do we start attracting youngsters and people into this profession at an earlier stage and more deliberately?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's got to be an attractive prospect, and I think certainly from maybe a financial point of view, it can be quite attractive if people actually realise how much some of the salaries you can earn in certain sectors, or even at sort of more junior levels. I just don't think there's enough sort of information for young kids to understand, that it is actually a role, and there's different roles within that role. I like the idea of like apprenticeships for it at the moment. I think that's a really good idea. I'd love to take somebody on for that. Somebody I'm supporting, actually, a friend of the family recently, he's probably about 21 now, been in sort of quite a high-end mechanical engineering graduate job, and has just lost his way with it, really. He wants to move into safety, but he'll be able to do like things that I can't do, like process safety and that kind of stuff. And it's got a really good career path there, potentially. It's just getting people interested in it, but you've got to get it cut through the noise of it being boring, or it being, a bit sort of a maybe, an older person's job, or a second job.
I love that idea, Simon, of apprenticeships, and you wonder whether maybe some of the sort of bodies in the US and the UK can start to promote that sort of concept and start sort of trying to attract youngsters in, maybe straight from college.
They are already apparently. They are, certain colleges, certainly in the UK, are running them. I'm yet to see one like in the Northwest where I live. But it's not to say they wouldn't exist. But yeah, that's that kind of thing certainly would help, promote it. But I think for that, it's a sort of job where I think if you are young, maybe you are a school leaver or something like that, you have to be mentored. You have to shadow somebody. Like I'm self-taught, but I had 15 years of work and a certain type of work behind me, and I was able to sort of transition that way. That's not to say I didn't jump on the backs of other people, but or go sort of seek help. But I think if you're fresh out of college or school, you definitely need somebody with you, sort of as a guiding hand.
You touched on some really good points earlier, and you talked about transferable skills. And I think you're saying there is life experience is really useful as a safety person, isn't it? As a safety professional. And I think I wanted to finish off because I'm conscious of we're running out of time, but we need to get you back because there's so much more we could talk about. And I'm desperate to get that forward for that third book or fourth book. But I think one of your transferable skills, and it's on the cover of the book, so maybe we could quickly talk about that. And you talk about being a big mouth, but actually there's a really good point behind that, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and it's about being able to speak to people, because if you can't speak to people in this game, and policing was the same, it can be very, very hard for people. And I think that's where some of the people that maybe struggle with getting their messages across, or maybe sort of getting some of their initiatives off the ground and engaging people, I think that's where they're lost, because it has attracted, or it seems to have attracted a certain type of person who maybe thinks it's just okay to try and push regulations on people or rules, but actually humans don't really like that. And policing wasn't like that, albeit a uniform helps and this kind of stuff. It can help, but still, I learned it was much easier to use your mouth to get things across better. But that's they don't teach that in any textbook. They don't teach it in any. You won't see it. And I think that's a really good way of succeeding.
I think that's a great point, because, and I've talked about it here in the States, especially I think in Murray State, where I went to grad school, and it didn't even have to be grad. I'm in the undergrad health and safety, and I'm very familiar with a lot of programs that do it. They pushed internships every summer. That's what you did. Some people took off semesters to stay in their internships and then came back. And I like it because, Jules, I got to throw it in. It's been a couple of weeks, camaraderie. It's really pretty crucial don't laugh. It's true. This health and safety, if you have the mindset of just, I want to go do my thing and not be open to communicating, you're not going to be successful in this field. Whether you're consulting, who then you're the one-time person who comes in maybe annually, if that at best, or, that to the opposite, where you're in there every day. You get to know the workers, get to know everyone, because it's, who wants to listen if you're not having that relationship and that rapport? And that's tough right now, I feel like, as the younger generation comes in and is used to, I think that's a great point.
It's probably the underlying theme of both books, and it's probably the underlying theme of my whole sort of approach, really, which was all about sell, don't tell, and you're selling something that not everyone wants to buy. Policing was the same. How do you get your sort of messages across in a way? And it's about being, a person. That's why the books are written in the way that they are. It's about just human connection, isn't it?
Before we wrap up, there were three things that really resonated with me, and I like to finish with a comedy reference, so I'll do that. The first one, Simon, was you talked about the getting to the people at the front line, and again, that's something that really resonates with what we've talked about in the pod previously, myself and Langdon, is how do we get that better engagement with employees, and again, don't make safety this dry, boring thing that people don't want to engage with. Secondly, you talk about don't be complacent, don't settle for safe enough, and the word you use, I love it, is bullshit. Don't settle for safe enough, because it's bullshit, isn't it? And actually, we've got to keep looking for how we can keep improving. But my favourite ending is one I've got to use before I let Langdon wrap us up, which is there's a great comedy programme in the UK, and it's called The Royal Family. And one of the lead characters in The Royal Family likes to pontificate, and he'll pontificate about something, and then he'll finish his sentence with "my arse," which is his kind of derogatory way of sort of suggesting it's not that good a point. And you talk about that in the book, and in your words, it's this whole thing around businesses saying it's safety first or safety is a priority. My arse. And I think, again, absolutely resonates with so many people who listen to this pod, that we hear that phrase and it doesn't mean anything. But at that point, I'll stop pontificating, and I'll hand over to my bold compadre to wrap things up for us.
Everyone, we appreciate you listening in. Simon, it was a pleasure to have you here. I look forward to being able to read book number 2 and hopefully taking part in books number 3 or 4.
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get, as I always say. You're more than welcome. As I say, book number 3 is already spoken for. Yeah. But number 4, you could be a number 4. Why not?
Yeah, that works. Well, everyone, grab your copy, and we look forward to talking to you again. And Simon, it was a pleasure. Thank you again. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Everyone, stay safe, watch your own back, and watch each other's back out there. Hey everyone, really appreciate you tuning into this episode of Two Bald Guys Talking Safety. Please follow and subscribe to wherever you stream your favorite podcast, or visit us at evotix.com.
And if you want to see how follically challenged we really are, come and check us out on YouTube. If you've got value from the podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts, and in the review section of this podcast, if you could leave us a review or a rating, that would be great.
And as always, everyone, while you're going about your days and about your normal lives, stay safe out there and watch each other's back.